Game balancing. Something pretty much any multiplayer game with some competitive merit goes through. Changing up the meta for better or for worse by either buffing or nerfing certain characters. Smash Ultimate had 14 patches that included game balance changes compared to Smash 4's 9. Also, instead of just stating adjustments will be made to balance the game and nothing else, like what? And players having to figure out the changes themselves, which is crazy when you think about it, by the way. And said changes would then get uploaded onto something like Smashboards. Thankfully, now the official patch notes go into detail about the changes stating the characters and moves and what they changed about them. While still not completely in detail on the exact specifics in regards to how many frames of end lag were shaved off of a move, for example, it was a massive change considering it required way less effort to figure out how much was changed in the patch compared to Smash 4. The first few patches of the game were also the biggest ones, all changing up at least a few characters in quite a significant way, not to mention all the minor buffs or nerfs many more characters received. In patch 2.0, if I counted correctly, 55 characters were changed with at least one buff in some sort of way. In contrary, patch 3.0 consisted of a lot of nerfs, with almost every projectile in the game dealing less shield damage, which is why I also consider it the best patch. Because fuck projectiles, am I right? Another thing I want to touch on is that nobody had any fucking clue what they were talking about. Sonic in mid tier, Cloud in low tier, not to mention Belmonts in S tier and Game & Watch and Palutena in E tier. It was criminal how much everyone underrated Game & Watch early on, and that might also be the reason Game & Watch down air got buffed in patch 2.0. In turn leading to Game & Watch players now down airing every fucking time they are somewhat remotely in the air. Also, Sonic back air getting buffed? Thankfully, these buffs are somewhat mild because I couldn't imagine already top tier characters getting major improvements. Then again, it's not like unnecessary buffs were just a thing in these first two patches. However, remember when I said that in patch 2.0 55 characters received at least one buff? I was actually lying. There was one character out of everyone that only received nerfs. Now what piece of shit character could have been so broken on launch that despite the focus on making characters better, the developers felt like they just had the nerf? Rool. The only character out of 70 plus characters in the game that only got nerfs. Now these nerfs weren't anything major, but it's still kind of funny looking back at it. It's easy to forget, but quite a few characters got significantly improved over the game's lifespan. More than I expected looking back on all the updates that have happened, but there are definitely a good number of characters who went up on the tier list because of them. Some more than others, however. For example, you have Ken. Now, let's take a look at the buffs Dr. Mario got in patch 8.0. Regardless, I think these are some of the characters that got improved a good amount because of the buffs they received, and you could probably argue for a few more, like Kirby and even Cloud, who received a stronger up smash and a dash attack that used to barely kill in the late 100s, now being one of the scariest moves in the game when at the ledge. Despite some of the buffs some characters got being quite mild when they should have been bigger, a lot of them really did help characters out a ton, and all of them were deserved, except a few. I already mentioned Game & Watch and Sonic being buffed, but you can chalk that up as a result of people not knowing how good those characters were so early on. So imagine the surprise when fucking Young Link and Samus received buffs. Oh, you didn't like being forced into shield because of the onslaught of projectiles? Well, no worries, that can be fixed by giving these two a kill throw for some reason. Not only that, they decided to buff Sonic again like 2 patches later. Well, despite a few mishaps here and there, at least overall, the buffs that the dev team decided to implement were pretty good in my opinion, and definitely did improve the game. Nerfs, while not as prevalent as buffs, were still there. Looking back on characters that got nerfed, the one that stands out the most by far in my opinion is Pichu. This character got fucking nuked. Getting nerfed on 11 different moves, and the third box was made bigger. Even bigger than Pikachu's somehow. Two other characters that also got nerfed around that same time were Snake and Olimar. And like, thank God. Snake could have gotten nerfed even more as far as I'm concerned. Peach and Wolf were two other top tiers that were also nerfed somewhat, but just like Snake remained in the upper echelons of the game. A character that I think would go under the radar when talking about nerfs is Mega Man, whose nerfs were definitely earned. Leaf Shield used to be so spammable, and it still kind of is. Despite all of this, I think it's a shame not more characters got nerfed, especially considering Pichu was one of the most fun characters to watch, yet got nerfed to oblivion. But piece of shit characters like Rob and Sonic remained the same throughout. This got even worse with broken ass DLC Pack 2 fighters getting released. Min Min and Pirate did receive some nerfs in those last two patches, but Steve and Kazuya remained pretty much the same as that final update hit and continue to be broken as hell to this day. Were the patches any good? Yeah, I would say so. For the amount of characters it has, the game is really well balanced, with no character really standing out because of how terrible they are, except maybe Ganondorf. And more characters than ever being able to do well at big tournaments, in part due to the balancing. The few buffs that I think shouldn't have happened and were unnecessary aren't really all that big of a deal when compared to the amount of buffs that were definitely needed and actually did improve the game. My only real gripe is that a few characters really should have received nerfs because they either weren't nerfed enough before, or because they hadn't received them at all. The nerfs they did apply onto characters were alright most of the time though, so I really just wish they did more of that, especially to these two. To close out the video, I want to give a moment of appreciation to the Google translated English translations of the Japanese patch notes. As such, Smash Ultimate is the only video game that could grace us with the words fluffy angle and deadly trick. And yeah, that's it. Actually, no, one more thing. Something I noticed while making this video is that in all of the patch notes the characters are in order of which character comes first in the roster. Except patch 3.0, for some reason, which is in alphabetical order. Which I thought is pretty interesting. Okay, goodbye.